Yes, even though the Wii is a long discontinued console, the death of the Wii Shop actually affects us all. And not just because we're going to miss out on that sweet-ass background music. Today, January 30th, after 12 years of operation, Nintendo is pulling the plug on the Wii Shop. I believe that extends to the video-on-demand services they also offer through the Wii, and I would check on my own, except Natalia actually stole my Wii for her video game diorama collection thing she's got going on in her office.
Well, I'm sorry baby, but you lost it. It's mine now.
So I guess I'll have to wait for her to wake up and then call her to ask if she can still log on to Netflix on the Wii. But Nintendo had announced that as the date of the closure of the Wii Shop would approach, these services would be discontinued. So I would assume they don't work anymore. It's important to remember that Nintendo actually announced this back in September 2017. So yes, we did have plenty of time to process this information and to deal with it accordingly. Now, as of right now, you can still re-download games you purchased on the Wii Shop. You just can't buy anymore. And if you had any Wii points on it, guess what? You lost them. But even though it's still possible to re-download games you had on that system, Nintendo has made it very clear that this obviously isn't going to be the case forever. They are also shutting down the Wii System Transfer Tool, which is a software that allowed you to transfer everything you own from your Wii to your Wii U if you're one of the few people that actually bought a Wii U. Now, obviously, some people will say, who cares about the Wii? I mean, the reason my girlfriend took my Wii for her collection is because mine had been in a drawer for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I didn't even look at the thing. And that's how many people will feel about this. It's the natural progression. As systems get older, they stop being supported and you stop being able to buy things on their virtual storefronts. This was also an issue with the PSP Go, which we just talked about the other day here on the channel. You're also unable to buy games on the PSP storefront. Of course, just like what's happening with the Wii right now, you can go on the PSN on your PSP Go and re-download games you already purchased, but it's clear that this is not going to be the case forever. One day, we're going to miss out on that option. And this is a problem because of game preservation. Obviously, this is only going to affect people who actually bought these games. Pirates, people who mod these systems to play these games for free, they are completely unaffected by these moves. And the people who are actually damaged by these choices are always legitimate customers. And undoubtedly, this is going to push some people towards piracy, at least now, because how else are you going to buy games on these systems? It's really a shame, especially when you consider the state of the online offerings on the Switch. And again, I always mention this, I love my Switch, but it's what Nintendo's offering on the eShop is a far cry from what it offered on the Wii. Take the Virtual Console, for instance, which barely exists anymore. Nintendo decided to do away with the model they went with the Wii, the Wii U, and the 3DS, and when it comes to offering old school games, which is a major source of interest for me in this channel. On the Wii, there were so many titles you could get on Virtual Console, and in a lot of ways, Virtual Console was a dream come true, especially to gamers who yearn for old school gaming but aren't savvy enough to mess around with emulators and things like that. There were hundreds of titles you could get on the Virtual Console on the Wii, and I mean, if you bought them, you can still download them for a while. Soon enough, you're not going to be able to download these games at all. And it's funny, when you look at the list of games on Wikipedia, there are a lot of games that were added to Virtual Console and were later removed from the catalog. And I can't speak for all of the titles that were removed, but one can assume it had to do with licensing agreements, which again underscores the idea that when you buy these consoles on a digital storefront, they aren't actually yours to keep. I mean, obviously, if you're able to keep your Wii in pristine working condition for all these years to come, yes. If you ever have, say, any hardware issues with your Wii, and let's assume you have, I don't know, 30 or 40 games that you bought on Virtual Console there, if you ever have any issues with this Wii, they are gone. You're going to have to buy another Wii. I mean, at least they're not very expensive these days, but you're going to have no other option but to hack this thing and then just download all these games illegally. And again, I understand. It's been 12 years. You had plenty of time to enjoy these games, and likely you weren't even using your Wii anymore, like was my case. But again, this touches on something that causes a lot of anxiety for people like me, who have been buying games digitally on the Switch as their exclusive way of buying games. I have about 6 or 7 physical games, and everything else I have on the Switch was bought digitally on the eShop. And it's very convenient. I like not having to lug all these games around with me. You can't lose them. I mean, you can't physically lose them, but as Nintendo just proved, you could potentially lose them some years down the road if the system proves not to be profitable anymore and they decide to pull the plug on this. So this actually makes me reconsider if I want to go on just buying games digitally on the eShop as opposed to buying them at an actual store. Then again, I play a lot of indies on the Switch, so I really have no choice there. This is, of course, nothing new. We've been using these platforms for over a decade now. Things like iTunes, Steam, good old games. I buy digital books these days even. I haven't bought an actual physical book in, I'm gonna say, close to 10 years. So this is a very good reminder for us as consumers of what we're getting into with these systems. We're not actually buying these things. Unless you can actually hold it in your hands, it's not truly yours. It's almost a philosophical debate, really. This is a big problem for video game preservation. Obviously, it's not just about playing these games and enjoying the games you bought, but it's also about preserving these things as a part of gaming history. For a long time, it wasn't possible to just buy these games, right? Like, we had to deal with emulators and sketchy websites and potentially getting viruses that damage our computers or expose our personal information. And then when the Virtual Console came, it was like the first way in a long time that you could actually legitimately buy a lot of these games. And I think in our excitement for that, we didn't even stop to think that, you know, you're kind of renting these for an extended period of time. You're not actually buying them in the typical sense of the word. These can be taken away from you at any time. That is something that doesn't concern me as much with things like GOG, formerly known as goodoldgames.com. They are like a Steam of old school gaming. They offer some more recent games as well, but originally that's what they were named after, goodoldgames.com, which is kind of why they don't really go by that name anymore. It's just GOG.com. At least they offer DRM-free games, which means these games that you buy through GOG are much, much easier to safekeep for the future. You can just download all the executable files and put them away somewhere, or in several different places, like is my case. Everything I bought on that service, I have on a thumb drive somewhere, on an external hard drive. I have it on multiple computers already installed and ready to go. So I feel a lot more safe about that solution as opposed to something like the Wii Shop or the eShop on the Switch. This situation also highlights how far back we went when it comes to how many games Nintendo was offering at some point. On the Wii Shop, you had hundreds of games, hundreds of retro games. You had, of course, SNES games and a bunch of relatively obscure games at that. You had N64 games. We don't have any of that on the Switch, and there are no plans at the moment to bring these things to Nintendo's hybrid console. So it's researching about this story and going back to seeing what we had back then compared to what we have now. It's kind of disappointing. Like I said in the beginning, obviously for a lot of people this is not that relevant. A lot of people, myself included, haven't even touched their Wii in a that sounded very wrong. Haven't even touched their Nintendo Wii console in a very long time. A lot of people probably didn't take advantage of all of these games that were available to purchase there. As lovers of video games, this is something I've been wanting to make a video for a long time. For a very long time, I was a hardcore mobile gamer. I bought and reviewed a bunch of iPhone games, for instance. On my YouTube channel, on my website, I was very enthusiastic about the idea of having one device that you can make phone calls, you can browse the web, you can chat online, and you could also game. And this is something that has plagued mobile gaming way more than it has any other system. The App Store, more so than the Play Store, I would say, is pretty fickle in that they remove games sometimes seemingly at random. And the problem with cell phones is that firmware upgrades often will break games, which cause the companies to just pull them from the store entirely. So the phone will just randomly one day stop playing the games you love, and you won't be able to re-download them because a lot of them are just gone forever. There are not only that, but sometimes there are licensing disputes which also cause games to be pulled from the App Store. So this is something that has affected me as a mobile gamer for a very long time, and it's good to remember that this can also happen when you also play conventional consoles. So how does that make you feel? If you buy a lot of digital games on the Switch, are you still confident of putting your money there, knowing that one day you might be unable to re-download these games? Are you okay with the situation, as I imagine many will be, because it took Nintendo so long to discontinue the Wii Shop? Or like me, does this make you reconsider the relationship you have as a consumer with these companies when you're not actually buying these things in a traditional sense? Like I'm so used to just tapping a button on my devices on my phone to buy music or movies on iTunes or on games on Steam or books on my digital reader. But situations like this remind me of what I'm getting myself into. Or maybe I'm just a paranoid. You tell me. As always, let me know in the comments how you feel about the situation. I'm very curious about your thoughts on this matter. Tell me where you're watching these videos from. I'm always fascinated to find out where you guys are watching these videos from. And you know what's funny? In my last video, I always ask this question, and I got a bunch of comments from people who live in my province, which I didn't expect. Small world, right? Follow me on social media. That's a great way to keep up with the channel. Sometimes YouTube won't notify you of new videos that come out, so that's an option. Instagram or Twitter, I'm very active on both. I post a bunch of behind the scenes shot on my Insta, for instance, so if you're into that, check it out. The links are going to be in the description. And that's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy, and I'm done.